Welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week we will discuss tools, tips, and ways to radiate your best life ever, interviewing practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Hi, and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today, I am joined by Crystal Webster, who is a repeat guest on this show. We are going to radiate gratitude today because Crystal has a new book, and that is Confessions of a Griever. So the Confessions of a Griever, taking a hot mess and turning it into a Haute Message. I love that title. Thank you so much, Crystal, for joining me today. I'm trying to adjust my view here. There we go. We've got both of us here. Hi.
Hi. Oh, it's so good to see you again. It's been forever.
Well, at least since the middle of March.
Yes.
When we all went on lockdown here in the Kansas City area. Mm-hmm. So, Crystal, did I get the title right? I was reading from your website, but I didn't have the subtitle in front of me.
Yeah.
Is that right? And now I see it. Turning a hot mess into an Haute Message. Laughable Lessons for when life just sucks. Yeah.
Yep.
You needed to write that book, didn't you?
I sure did. Because sometimes, let's be honest, sometimes life just sucks. There's no mincing words. There's no two ways around it.
Life just sucks. Such as when you lose a child, which we talked about the first time you were on. Mm-hmm. And you have really taken that grief and turned it into beauty. And I love what you've done, not only to get yourself up out of the depths of grief, but to help others who are actively grieving. So, you could have done that with speaking engagements. You could have done it with, you've got your Sharing Solace token that people can share with other grievers. But why a book?
That is a good question.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stump you.
No. And I honestly, you've heard this statistic, the saying that everyone has a book in them and everyone should try to write a book, and everyone starts a book, but only 2% of people ever finish their book. Mm-hmm. But to be perfectly honest, this almost just fell into my lap, the opportunity to do this.
How so?
So I had attended a conference a year and a half ago, met some amazing people in LA from all over the country and actually all over the world. And one of them was from the Washington, D.C. area, who knows a professor at Georgetown. And he's developing, I guess, this book writing class. And somehow our names were exchanged, and we had a little conversation, and he was like, I really think that you have some words inside you that need to be put on the page. And if you will come along on this journey with me, your book will be out next May.
Oh my gosh.
And I just kind of got the goosebumps and realized I couldn't not do it, because everything that's so important to me happens in May.
Right. And this book came out May 19. And I know that you have a very special story about that date and why the book needed to be launched then.
Yeah.
Can you
so
share
my
that?
Madeline's birthday is May 19th.
Yeah.
She would have been 10 this year. So for her 10th birthday, instead of Barbies and ponies and LOL dolls and whatever else 10-year-olds want, she got a book.
Yeah.
So this was my birthday present to her this year.
Wow. Well, every child has a birthday, but moms have that birthday too.
Mm-hmm.
That's the day that you became a mom.
Yep.
And I know that was also a day that was very bittersweet for you.
Yes. I like to say that, every mother wants to make their children proud of them. However they became a mother, however they currently are a mother. I try to make my Madeline proud of me every single day. I just get to look up when I talk to her instead of down.
Right. And sadly, the day she was born was also very close to the time she left as well. Mm-hmm. And that I know that truly, truly sucks. That is probably the worst thing that any mom could ever imagine. Yeah. And we talked quite a bit the first time that you were on the podcast about how you were able to pull yourself up out of grief. It's been a while since I talked to you last, about a year, I think.
Yeah.
And so what do you think this process of writing the book and connecting with the grievers in your community, your Sharing Solace community? Of course, I want to share your website, which is sharingsolace.com, but you've been reaching out and touching a lot of people in grief. How do you think that's changed? What has blossomed? What has grown for you in this past year?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that you ever end grief. Grief never truly ends. You just kind of learn to carry it in a more efficient way than early on in your grief journey. Mm-hmm. There will always be things that I miss about my Madeline or trigger me to have a bad day or, those kind of things. But I hope that I'm able to have more positive, uplifting, fulfilling days over the long term. And when I do think about Madeline, occasionally there are tears, but oftentimes there are tears of happiness and tears of, joy. But I've really been able to connect with people in a different way through just writing this book and getting feedback from the book. Because it is such a touchy subject. I mean, nobody wants to talk about grief. But it's something that everyone experiences. And so I feel like it's important to talk about, but it's not always the fun thing to talk about. So trying to find a way that makes it maybe a little bit more fun or humorous, and getting other people's thoughts and reactions and advice to kind of my kind of outside the box thinking. It's probably a good way of putting it. So I've got to have some really cool, in-depth conversations with people that I might not have otherwise about a topic that's very close to my heart.
Right. And when you do start scratching the surface of people who are going through grief, turns out there are a lot of parents who are going through this. Mm-hmm. And so did you write this book for them, or did you write this book for a broader audience?
So I wrote this book for Madeline, to be perfectly honest. But to me, grief is grief. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if it's the loss of a child or the loss of a pet or a job or a spouse or a partner. Grief is grief. And to say that my grief is better or worse than your grief is crap. It's just different. I can say that the worst grief that I've ever experienced is the loss of my child. But to say that that is the worst grief there is to experience is not true.
No.
So this book is really for anyone that's experienced any sort of grief. And I actually have a list of all. It's not an all-inclusive list, but there's a list in the book of things that you can grieve.
Well, I'm just kind of laughing here. I mean, because you treat this subject like you treat your life, with whimsy, with fun, with joy. Yeah, through grief, you look at the whole picture. It's not just the depths of the grief. You look at joyful aspects as well. I mean, for crying out loud, look at these beautiful flowers behind you. There's whimsy in your bright pink. It's like the pink and the green are your signature colors. And and so you do treat everything with a sense of fun and joy and life and vibrancy and whimsy. And I just want to recognize you for that. So looking at your book's landing page, so there you've got these wonderful quotes from people. It says, "I laughed, I cried, and sometimes at the same time." And you say, Crystal helps readers understand why you should go duck yourself, why you don't get to call her husband an a-hole, why you should do more good shit, how you'll set yourself free. And my grief can beat up your grief. So this is just hilarious. So yeah, can you just talk about like the role of whimsy and the role of humor in your book?
Well, I mean, I was always raised that you can either laugh or you can cry about pretty much any scenario. And you're going to do one of the two. So you might as well laugh about it. And that's kind of along the lines of always trying to find the silver lining. And, I mean, my husband and I have terrible jokes about my daughter, Madeline. We had her cremated, and she's in a little urn on our bedstand. So I get to say goodnight to her every night. But we tease that she's on the do not fly list. Because she's in a lead box. Come on.
Yeah, no way she's getting through TSA.
Yes, exactly. So there's just kind of thing like, yes, I do have those times that I am very down, and honestly, I would do anything humanly and inhumanly possible to have her here with us today.
Yes.
I've tried. It didn't work.
Right.
She wouldn't want me to be miserable for the rest of my life.
No.
But she's still a huge part of my life. And so that's why, we have little inside jokes with her, and we still talk about her, and I have 3 nephews, and my nephews know that they have a cousin that just is watching them from above.
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, if you're going to laugh or you're going to cry about it, so you might as well laugh.
Might as well laugh. I love it. And there is just like such humor in this. So like walk us through the book, Crystal. Like what can we expect? What kind of stuff would we read in your book?
So it is a little bit my story. So it's a little bit the story of Madeline. There's a lot of tips and tricks and things that have just kind of helped me as I move through my own grief. As far as, like go duck yourself. That is a strategy that I used.
What is that?
So there is it's almost like a programming, like a computer programmer folklore. And I'd have to look up but it's a term that they use for when you can't solve a problem. So like the kind of the story is that this computer programmer can't solve something. And so he goes to talk to another coworker and immediately like comes up with the answer himself. And it's just the idea of talking to someone outside of your own head.
Right. And
so,
to duck out.
Yes.
Yeah. To duck out. I love it. Yeah. Sometimes we answer our own questions just by telling our problem to somebody.
Exactly. Or, I mean, not even to someone, just to say the problem out loud. you come to a solution. So,
so
yeah, it's a little bit my memoir. It's a little bit self-help. It's a choose your own grief guide. So
you can choose your own adventure.
Exactly. Yes.
Oh, I love it.
So at the end of every, they're like short chapters. At the end of every chapter, you get to decide where you want to go next.
I love that.
So you could be on page 5 and go all the way to the end, page 205, and then flip back to page 17. Because it kind of also resembles how grief works. You don't linearly, and life in general, you don't, it's not like, okay, 1, 2, 3. Sometimes it's A, Q, B, Z, T, S, there's no one way to live life or live grief.
Oh, that's absolutely right. And I'll bet you learned the hard way, all the different ways that you can experience grief.
I think we all do at some point. I just had the luxury of doing it in my 20s.
That's a very good way to put it. It's been, let's see. I measure everything in terms of my daughter. She's 13. My dog died the summer before she was born, and I still grieve my dog.
Yeah.
I have another dog, and I have 2 other cats that came along since then, and I still grieve my dog. Right. But it's, and I'm always surprised when that comes up, but we all have those. I think a lot of us collectively are grieving life pre-coronavirus.
Yes. I am finding that a lot right now in that. Yeah. And people are not, I don't think people understand that they're grieving. Mm. They're having this emotion and they don't quite know what it is. And it's grief. You're grieving the summer of 2020 that you thought you'd have. You're grieving the end of the school year that didn't exist. You're grieving, the volleyball league that's been canceled, or the birthday party you didn't get to go to. Mm-hmm. But people aren't quite able to realize that they're grieving. And if they are, they oftentimes, especially with Corona, they're brushing it under that gratitude rug. Yeah. And they're saying, well, at least I'm healthy. At least I still have a job. At least this, at least that. They're not, you can be both grateful and grieving at the same time.
That's kind of how I picture you, Crystal.
Yeah, a lot of times.
And I feel like that's why we're radiating gratitude today.
Exactly.
But yeah, there's a lot. I mean, we can grieve things in our everyday life. I mean, it can be something joyful, like a job change, a promotion, or a different job, but we can still grieve, the friends we left at our last job. And during this coronavirus, of course, there's just so many things that we're missing right now. And I love how you broke that down for us, that we may be feeling emotions, but not really acknowledge what it is, truly. There are a lot of kids who didn't get to have graduation.
Yes.
They didn't get to have senior skip day.
Yeah.
Or the field trips that they were planning on. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So, yeah, this is a good point. So everybody's got a bit of grief, but everybody can work through it. Can you talk a bit about, there was another, all of these little bullet points are just gold. Can you talk about why you don't get to call her husband an a-hole?
So that's kind of like my idea of platitudes. So, I am mostly happily married. Actually, 14 years today, I've been married to my husband.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. Yay. So, I mean, I'm stuck with him for the rest of my life, morally and legally obligated to him. And I love him dearly. But I also know when he's being a jerk. and when he is, not when he's being an a-hole. And I get to call him out on that. That is like my privilege as his wife to call him out on that, right? But the second that you start calling him names, we're going to step outside and have a rumble in the alley. Like I get to, you don't.
Right. I get to call my mom a bitch. You don't.
Yes, exactly. And I would think that my husband would feel the exactly like he can call me. Well, we will have words if he calls me too many 4-letter words. But but he won't take it if somebody else calls me those names or whatever. Right. And I feel that way about platitudes too. Everything happens for a reason, and God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Like those are things that when I'm ready, I get to say to myself. Yeah. You don't get to tell me those things.
Yeah. What does that really mean? And what does that really do when someone says, well, she's better off, she's not in pain, things always happen for a reason? What does that do for someone in grief? Is that something appropriate?
It kind of pours salt on their wound. You can be, I mean, my grandfather just passed away. He was 93 years old. And he was, he was in pain, and he didn't. And while I logically understand that, now he's not in pain, and there's, all of the things that you can say to someone, I logically understand that, but that doesn't make my heart hurt any less.
Right.
So for you to try to rationalize my grief is not rational. It just kind of, how do I say this nicely?
Don't worry about saying it nicely, Crystal.
It's kind of like an STFU kind of thing.
And if anybody needs to Google STFU, I would encourage you to do that.
Yes. It's basically a be quiet type of thing,
Shut the F up. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Platitudes are there to make the person saying them feel better because they don't know what else to say. Mm-hmm. And while I understand that, it's not my job to make you feel better. Like me as the griever, it's not my job as the griever to make you, the person that's uncomfortable in my grief, feel better. Mm. So it's almost better just to not say anything. Mm-hmm. But I get it. Like I've caught myself from saying those platitudes myself to other people. Right. But that's kind of where that comes from is I get to decide what my silver linings are, and I get to decide what my reason is for everything happens. And I get to decide, that they weren't in pain anymore. You don't get to tell me those things.
Right. It's not your grief.
Right.
Right.
And I would hope that you would give me the grace to understand that my grief is not rational, and I just need to feel my feels. And at some point, I will become a rational human being again, theoretically.
Exactly. But you decide your timeline.
Yes.
That is your timeline. And, you're absolutely right. Grief comes in fits and starts.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm 10 years into this journey, and there are times that I just curl up in a ball. Just middle of August is the worst for me. That first day of school every year. I don't always know when it's coming because I don't have any other kids that are going to school. Mm-hmm. Until I see those first day of school pictures and everybody's talking about going. And then I'm just oh. And I kind of just, my mind, I'm triggered to, well, where would Madeline be? And what grade would she be in? And what would we be doing? And For some reason, like holidays, I kind of prepare myself for those. Christmas comes every year. Hanukkah, Thanksgiving, those, that those are coming. If for no other reasons, Target tells you they're coming. But the first day of school is never like the same time. Right. And it's just one of those, like, even though I know it's coming, I never know when it's coming kind of thing. And every year for the last 10 years, it just hits me like a ton of bricks.
Right. That's really hard. It is. I went through, it's a different type of grief, but infertility grief. And it was a terrible roller coaster. And there were so many reminders all around all the time. And it's hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely.
And that's the thing is we all have our own grief. Whether that happened 2 days ago or 20 years ago, or can we just give each other grace to realize that everyone has an inner story that I can guarantee you don't know about, and that they're working through and they're grieving through. Mm-hmm. So let's just kind of be nice to each other.
Did you know that Radiate Wellness has a subscription-based premium content Facebook group? Think of it like the premium version of this free podcast. In this premium Facebook group, you can find great content like replays of online classes, meditations on angels, chakras, mindfulness, and more, guest speakers, mini classes, polls, plus you'll be the first to know of guests that we have scheduled for the podcast and can submit questions for them. You get all of this great content for one low monthly price, and the first month is half off. You can subscribe by going to radiatewellnesscommunity.com/shop. Click the subscriptions button and you're in. Also, while I have your attention, wherever you're listening to this free podcast, if you could just do us a couple of favors, please. One is go to hit the subscribe or follow button. Then you'll be notified of all of the episodes we have coming out each week. Also, please rate and review. It sounds really simple, but it helps us to grow our audience when people are looking for great podcasts. And when we grow our audience, we can do bigger and better things and bring you even more great guests. So please do those couple of things, and that will help us grow this audience and this podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
That's always a good idea, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah, especially during this whole COVID thing, where we may all be grieving different things differently at different times, but right now we're in the collective S pile.
Yes.
And at least when we're all going through very similar things, we're not all going through the same thing, I cannot lie. But when we all kind of have this collective thing happening, we can at least be kind to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you were planning, oh my goodness, you've been planning this book launch. And
a year.
Madelin's birthday. Yes, a year. And then all hell broke loose.
Yes.
So, right? How did you deal with that? How did you shift?
So I was really excited to have a real birthday party for her. Like I always do something special on Madelin's birthday. Sometimes it's just releasing balloons. I've gone and bought cake for strangers, but this was really kind of the first year that I was going to have a true birthday party for her. Because I had I felt, as weird as it sounds, I felt like I had a reason to have a birthday party for her this year.
Right.
Like, I'm going to call it a birthday party, but it's a book launch party. And so people can't think I'm weird because I'm just launching this book. It's not really a birthday party for my dead daughter. It's a book launch party. So I was really excited to, have cake and ice cream and games and just do all the things that you do at a 10-year-old's birthday party. And I couldn't because, you can't. you just can't. So I got creative. I did what all moms of 10-year-olds do. We took the birthday party online and figured it out.
Right. And so how did you move an entire birthday party / book launch online? How does one do that?
Well, we had, like everything these days, it was a Zoom call. And we had, 50 people on this Zoom call. And everyone that said they were coming got a box in the mail, and it had party favors and hats and whistles and cake. I can't mail ice cream. I tried. It melted. So they got cake and a birthday candle. And I came up with some games to play, and we played games and ate birthday cake and sang happy birthday. And it was great.
That's wonderful.
It was good.
Yeah, this is your first book. You've got to mark that in a way, but the book wouldn't be here without Madeline and without your journey. Mm-hmm. So that's very fitting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I would have preferred to have it, I don't know, a Chuck E. Cheese or something, but we don't always get what we want. I've learned that the hard way.
I think the Rolling Stones had a song about that.
Yes.
Well, I want to bring it back to the book again. Then I'm just kind of moving down your hilarious bullet points. Okay. Why you should, quote, do more good stuff. So I'm not really sure what 3, 4, or 5 letter words we can really get away with on a podcast, but so I'll just say.
Well, you're in charge. You can get away whatever you want.
Oh, well, yeah, exactly. Right. You would think that I would have more clout than that. Apparently I don't always. So
got it.
Why you should do more good stuff.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
I found very early on in my grief journey, there were things that made me feel bad. And there were things that made me feel less bad. Not good. Because when you're in that heavy, debilitating, very early grief, nothing feels good. But I found that there were things that made me feel less bad. So I did more of those things. Mm-hmm. Whether that was going on a walk, or I learned to crochet little tiny baby blankets and angel wings that I donate, and I still make them. I donate them to organizations that give care packages to babies in the NICU. It was things like that made me feel less bad. So I did things that made me feel less bad.
That is sound advice for anyone.
I think so, yeah.
And even when you're in the depths of grief, just working with your hands, doing that crochet. I know I was in a musical one time about women in the westward expansion called Quilters, a wonderful play. And one of the lines, these women had horrific stories, harsh, hard stories. And the stories were based on actual diaries from women on the westward expansion. And one of them was saying that in her grief, she just would pick up a quilt piece. And as she did this, her mind became clearer again. There's something about creation. There's something about doing keeping your hands busy, something about having a purpose in making something that doesn't fix anything, but it helps lift you up and out of what you're doing and what you're feeling. So yeah, raising the vibration.
Exactly that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so do you, as time goes by, do you find that has changed for you, what you do to lift yourself up?
I find that there are things that kind of come and go from the repertoire of things that make me feel less bad. Mm-hmm. But there are some staples there, like crocheting. little things. Now I make some hats, and I just kind of switch it up, but it's crocheting is how it is. And that really helps me.
Mm-hmm.
So it brings me a lot of comfort to, one, it's doing something with my hands that means that those hands can't be putting Oreos in my mouth. That helps a lot too. But I know that I'm bringing comfort to someone else by doing those things. So by helping someone else, I'm helping myself.
Yeah. There's a reason why the serving spoon is much bigger than the eating spoon.
And that reason is?
Because serving is more important than taking.
Yes.
Serving can help you feel whole and like you're contributing, like you just makes you feel a little lifted up, right? Yeah. Taking only numbs or quiets what's going on, but serving actually lifts you up. Yeah. So I think that's why the serving spoon is bigger than the eating spoon. Although you could probably eat with a serving spoon.
I was going to say, unless it comes to ice cream and then you use a serving spoon.
Or a ladle.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to talk about my grief can beat up your grief. I just thought I just got swept up in a moment there with my grief can beat up your grief. So tell us about that. What does that mean to you?
I think that everyone wants their grief, whatever it is, to be uniquely theirs and uniquely the best. I, right after I lost my daughter, would hear other stories of other mothers that lost children. And unconsciously in my mind, I would say, at least they did this, or I didn't get to, or, and so I was trying to compare, like instantly compare my grief to theirs and make mine better or worse, depending on how you looked at it. And I think we all do that, no matter what it is, unconsciously or subconsciously. And while I think that's a coping mechanism and something that kind of needs to happen, especially early on, it's not particularly healthy in the long run. If we can just understand that there are a lot of similarities in grief, no matter what you're grieving. There are a lot of, ways that you can extrapolate what other people have done and felt and talked about regarding their grief and apply it to your own grief. So kind of, the play on the, well, my dad can beat up your dad kind of thing.
Right. Exactly.
Not really. They're just different.
Right. Yeah. And of course you mean that in a very tongue-in-cheek way.
Yes.
Approaching this with whimsy and humor.
Yes.
Right. So, it does evoke kind of an image when you say my grief can beat up your grief. It's like, okay, I kind of have a whole picture of what that looks like. And we all know people who, in fact, we do this too when we're in the depths of grief. It's like, there is no other grief besides my grief right now.
Right.
Right. That my grief is the most important grief right now because it's the one I am feeling. And
it is the most important grief that you are feeling. Yes. I was baffled that the world continued to spin right after my daughter died. Like, how are people going to the bank and the grocery store and functioning while I'm here in the worst pain, physically and emotionally, I feel like anyone could ever go through? And so that's kind of like, it is very tongue-in-cheek in that everyone's grief is different, but it's not better or worse, or one is not one cannot actually beat up the other one's grief. They're all just different. They're on the same playing field, just different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I do want to spend a little bit of time on your whole project of Sharing Solace, because that was really the precursor to this book. Mm-hmm. You started, man, you don't do anything by halves, Crystal. You just dive the F in.
Go big or go home. Come on.
So talk a bit about what Sharing Solace is and what it's for and why you started it.
Yeah. Well, you know why I started it, Madeline. And it's really a way to help grievers grieve and to help those that love grievers love their griever. I'm wearing our necklace. I love my necklace. And we offer symbolic and physical gifts in the form of a necklace and a keychain. And the idea is that you keep it with you near your heart as long as it brings you comfort, oftentimes in that initial kind of debilitating grief. And when you find that it doesn't bring you comfort anymore, it symbolically is telling you it's time to release that debilitating, heavy, heavy grief. And that's when you take out the middle token, put it into a new locket, and you pay that new locket forward onto somebody else you know that needs love and support as they go through their own grief, whatever that grief may be. And then the backside of each of the middle tokens has a special identifier on it that allows you to register it on our website and actually follow it as it moves from person to person. And that's really the secret sauce and what makes this so much more than just a tchotchke.
You've built a community around this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is what I found is the most important, because you feel so alone in your grief. Like, I understand logically 1 in 4 women in their lifetime will lose a pregnancy or an infant. 1 in 8 women suffer fertility issues. Like, that's 25 and 12. That's a lot of people.
Women. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But when you're going through it yourself, you feel completely alone. You feel like you're the only one that has ever experienced this, no matter what it is. I mean, it could be the loss of a job. It could be the loss of a dog or a pet,
or a relationship.
And not even like a romantic relationship. It could be a friendship relationship or a business partnership. Like, those are all things that you can grieve. And you oftentimes feel completely alone. Like, no one understands it. But if you allow yourself to see that there are other people that have experienced similar, not exactly the same, but similar situations,
right,
then it's a lot easier to move towards your new happy and your new normal.
Right.
And so I think that's what's most important with Sharing Solace, is that through the tokens that you pay forward to another person, if and when the time is right, we've built a community of people saying, look, sometimes life sucks, but we're here to lift you up, and we're here to give you our strength when you might not have the strength that you need. And let's do this together.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the biggest message. And, that I feel like that comes through in your book, because it's not just your stories, it's other stories as well. And we find that, everybody's grief is different, but we do share commonalities in it. Right. And I think that is very powerful. So, Crystal, is there anything else that you feel like we need to mention before we end our time together today?
I feel like we covered it all. I mean, you're right in that, the stories in this book are community and universal stories. I just happened to be holding the pen this time. Maybe next time you're holding the pen. Who knows?
Right. Yeah, and you're already receiving great reviews, great notices about your book. This is so exciting. I love to interview authors. And, we can find this. Where can we find this book?
The best place to go is sharingsolace.com.
Perfect.
Because that's where Madeline is. But of course you can find it, on Barnes and Noble and Amazon and any place you get a book. You might have to ask for it, but it's there.
And Confessions of a Grieving Mother is the title.
Confessions of a Griever.
A Griever. So sorry. I should have had it right in front of me. Confessions of a Griever. I knew I'd screw that up. Confessions of a Griever by Crystal Webster. So I would recommend this book for anybody who's suffered any type of loss, and we've all suffered losses, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
Griever. Unfortunately. And so visit the website sharingsolace.com and find this book wherever fine books are sold.
Yeah. Yay.
Confessions of a Griever. All right. Thank you so much, Crystal, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
We'll do this next time you have a book out.
Okay.
Radiate Wellness is a community of holistic and alternative healers and consultants based in the Kansas City area, dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.